Good evening. We'll call this meeting of the City Council of Beaver Dam together. This is the 7:30 meeting on Monday, the 20th of 2024. I'd like you to join me in the pledge and whoops, wait a minute. Sorry. I got to get roll call first. Got to know who's here.
All right, Anderson,
Here.
Appenfeld,
Here.
Burnett,
Here.
Furry,
Here.
Fisher,
Here.
Hiley,
Here.
Keel,
Here.
Mark,
Here.
Olson, Perkins, Yuds,
Here.
Zop.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum and now we'll do the pledge with a moment of silence afterwards. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time in our meeting, we have an informal public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to the council about something that's not on the agenda? Anyone here in person or online that would like to speak to the council as a question that's not on the agenda? Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and we'll move into announcements. I'm going to call on Mr. Furry.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I've got a couple announcements with regard to the Beaver Dam Community Library. If you bear with me here, I'll read through this. So thanks for listening tonight. First, on behalf of the Library Board of Trustees, we appreciate the City of Beaver Dam's investment into the library facility. The new roof and clerestory windows are an integral part of the essential improvements to come. Second, you're all invited to an informational meeting on Wednesday, May 29th from 5 to 6 p.m. With some other community stakeholders to learn more about naming rights, recognition opportunities, and kind of our program as we launch what we're calling the Next Chapter fundraising campaign for the library. And lastly, very excited to announce a generous gift to the library of $200,000 from the Keller Family Trust towards the reading room and fireplace in the new library. This donation is a significant keystone of the renovation project, and we're welcome to have you join us next week to learn more about the library's next chapter. So hope to see you there if you can make it, but that donation gets us off to a very good start.
Great news. Yes.
May 29th is next Wednesday from 5 to 6 at the library.
Very good. And just a reminder, there was an email sent out today, which hopefully most of you have gotten. We do have a special call meeting in 2 days on Wednesday at 6:30 here in the council chambers. Personnel attorney Steve Zock will be here to basically review the city administrator position and some of the things related to that. Also, I'm sure that we'll get a little bit more endorsement on this in a little bit, but Monday, the 27th is Memorial Day event at the cemetery at 10 o'clock is the ceremony. So we'll hear more about that in a minute, I'm sure. And everybody should have a new name tag. We bought them locally this year. Thank you, Mick. For some reason, we had bought them out of town recently and they took forever to get. And I said, let's get them here. So we got those locally. Any other announcements that anyone has? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the May 6th meeting? Alder Burnett?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Alder Fisher? We got a second from Alder Fisher. Any comments, corrections, anything about changes on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion, anybody against it? Any no's? Any abstentions? Okay, looks good. So today we have a presentation by the Poppy Day proclamation, actually. I'll come down there by the ladies. Starting out good at least. Well, tonight we have ladies from the American Legion Auxiliary. This to be and so, as the mayor, my proclamation is, whereas America is the land of freedom, preserved and protected, willing innocent soldiers. The next thing up is the city administrator report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to say thank you to all those that showed up at the Community Action Plan final presentation this last Thursday. The community members that participated did a really good job, and we will be getting that presentation online. It was video recorded, just have to do a little bit of trimming and making sure that it makes sense. So that will be forthcoming. And I think that's all I have tonight.
Okay, so that will be on the city's website.
Yeah, we'll be on our YouTube channel. We'll make sure that we have a link from the website.
Okay, great, great. Okay, do we have any communications tonight?
We do not have any communications.
Thank you. Moving on to the bills, you should all have a copy of the bills in front of you. Is there a motion to accept and pay the bills?
I'd like to make a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $1,6,429.14.
Thank you, Alder Mark. Is there a second to that? Alder
Second that.
Keel, thank you. And is there any discussion? Any questions on the invoices? Seeing none? Do a yes and no in that case. We need a roll call for bills? No. All in favor of paying the bills, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And is there any abstentions? Okay. Moving into, no, we don't have any ordinances, so we'll move on to resolutions. Resolution 37-2024.
Resolution number 37-2024, resolution providing for the sale of approximately $11,655,000 general obligation promissory notes, series 2024A.
Okay, we have a resolution in front of us and we have a gentleman from Ellers to talk to us. I'm going to suggest, would you mind going to that one over there? It's very helpful for the folks online that are zooming to be able to hear you. If you would, please introduce yourself and
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Harry Allen with Ellers. So tonight we're going to be talking about the GO notes that the city will be issuing this year. So there was a pre-sale report that was prepared and included within your packets. I'll just walk through all this at a high level and then take questions at the end. So we are talking about issuing 11.655 million of general obligation promissory notes. So you'll notice this is a little bit different than years past. The city has issued bonds in the past. May not seem like a big difference between bonds and notes, but we recently had a legislative change that is now allowing notes, which were previously restricted to a 10-year term, to now go out to a 20-year term. If you were in the past trying to issue debt for over that 10-year term, you would have to issue as GO bonds, and you could only fund certain types of projects under statute. The note statute is much more broad and it allows you to finance pretty much any project that you could need to pay for up to that 20-year term. So there's a lot more flexibility now with that legislative change, and there's really no reason to continue to issue GO bonds. So that's why this year we're looking at doing a GO note issue, utilizing that 20-year term for a portion of the issuance. And then you have some projects you're funding that won't be useful 20 years from now. Maybe they only have a 5 or a 10-year useful life. So we're amortizing that debt appropriately over the life of each item being financed. So with that, I just want to give you a quick update on where rates are at. The pre-sale report numbers were run at an interest rate of 3.87%. We had a similar sale occur in our office last week for a similar rated community GO notes over that 20-year term. That priced at 3.82%. So I'd expect that on sale day, you'll probably see numbers that are mostly comparable to what's in front of you tonight. Hopefully a smidge better, but you never really know on sale day. It'll be around that 3.87%. The city is currently rated, so we are going through a rating update process. We have a rating call scheduled, and we'll do that process, complete that prior to the bond sale. And then another change with this being a GO note versus a GO bond, that GO bond statute forced the city into doing what's known as a competitive sale, which means that you pick a date and a time and you distribute information to the market, and then everybody who wants to bid on your bonds would give you their lowest interest rate at that date and time, and you select the lowest overall cost and that's your winner. The GO notes, you're not required to go down that same method of sale. You could be more creative and flexible in that department. However, given the current interest rate environment, it makes no sense to use any other type of sale because this competitive sale does get you the best price at the end of the day and that lowest cost of borrowing. So despite not having to use that method of sale, we definitely see it in the best interest for the city to do that regardless. I just want to give you a quick update on timing, and then we can dive into kind of the finances and the impact of this borrowing. So today we're adopting initial resolution for the GO note, and then we will do some internal work. We'll have a due diligence call to review the official statement that gets distributed to the market. That will happen on June 3rd with staff. We'll have the conference with the rating agency. This is actually going to happen the week prior to June 3rd, but end of May. And then we'll distribute that official statement on June 10th. And then on June 17th, we'll come back before you. That morning, we'll take bids on the bonds and we'll work with an underwriter to resize and restructure the bonds accordingly. And then I'll be in front of you that night as well with an update on what the final pricing shook out on these. And then about 2 weeks after that, we have closing. That's when funds will be in hand at the city. That's expected to happen on July 2nd, excuse me. So with that, we can dive into some of these financial schedules, just give you a quick update on kind of where you are in that GO debt utilization of the debt limit, and then kind of the impact to your taxpayers. So looking at 2024 and your net levy for debt service, if you're on table 1, there's a lot of little numbers, so I'll just pick out the important ones. But on the left side, you have your total GO debt payment, which in 2024 was 7.6 million. Not all of that was supported directly by the property tax. You do have other sources of revenue that are abating a portion of that levy need. So that's TID 7, TID 8, TID 9, and then your utilities also pay for a portion of that debt. So you had 7.6 million of debt service, 6 million of that supported by the levy. And then looking forward into 2025, that levy drops down to 4.2 million and continues to drop down year over year as you see that debt fall off. Table 2, I'm not going to dive into this table in a ton of detail, but it does give you an idea of what the specific projects and line items are that we're borrowing for. It is a myriad of projects, so you're funding streets, some TID improvements, fire department equipment, some other facilities, parks, and then your utilities. So that includes stormwater, sewer, and then the water. In total, the bonds are supporting 11.5 million of projects. Then going on to table 3, this is how we size the bonds. This is how we determine the amount of debt that needs to be issued. So you're funding that 11.5 million of projects, but when you factor in the cost of issuing that debt and some interest earnings over the spend down period, we get to an amount that you need to issue of 11.655 million. And then off here to the right is how we're breaking that down by repayment source as well as the repayment term. So the majority of the projects are supported by the levy over that 20-year term. So that's about 3.6 million of the borrowing is repaid over 20 years. A smaller portion, 435,000, is over 10 years. And then you have a pickup truck for the fire department that has a shorter useful life. So that's only financed over 5 years. And then we're also including the stormwater, sewer, and water projects for this year, as well as reimbursing for last year's projects. We did have a discussion with the admin committee as to whether these utility projects should be broken off to their own borrowings or included within this GO borrowing. It was determined that keeping it in the GO gets a lower interest rate, saves on cost of issuance, and is overall more cost effective for the city. So the decision was made to keep those within a general obligation issue, despite that counting against the GO debt limit of the city, saving the interest cost and the upfront issuance cost seem to be the desire from that committee, so that is what we're running with. And then the last purpose here is TID number 7. There's 2.5 million for the extension of Kellum Road, which is required to be funded through a development agreement. Then table 4, I'm not going to touch on this too much. This is just kind of breaking down those different sizes into their amortization schedules over that 20, 10, or 5 years. But then to touch on the taxpayer impact on table 5, we have the net levy for 2025 of 4.2 million. That exists before we issue any new debt. And then when we add in the new debt, we're estimating the payment in 2025 to be around 960,000. But a lot of this debt is supported by sources other than the levy. So you have your stormwater revenues paying for their part, sewer and water are also picking up their portion. And then in addition, that TID number 7 project is going to be supported by TID revenues. So when we get to the net levy need, we're looking more at 4.6 million. So around 400,000 higher than before we issue this debt. But when we compare that to 2024 and we remove that 1-year note that was issued at the end of 23, we're only about 45,000 higher than we would have been in this current year. So a very small step up in the levy next year. And when we look at a taxpayer impact, that's around $670 for a $250,000 equalized value home. And then the last thing I'll touch on is just the utilization of that GO debt limit. So the city, like all municipalities in Wisconsin, is limited to only having 5% of the equalized value. That's a maximum amount that can be outstanding in GO debt principal. So looking at that, at the end of 2023, the city utilized 49% of that debt limit. And we're projecting that at the end of 2024, with some moderate growth in the equalized value for the city, we don't have that number yet, but just assuming 3.4% inflation for this year, that gets us to 54% of that utilization by year end. So a slight step up there, but then if you look in 2025, you dip down to 47% and we continue to trend downwards as we pay off debt. Then the last thing I will touch on is table 7. This is looking at your abated debt service and whether there are actually revenues there to pay for that debt. So these are all the debt that's being paid by non-levy sources. So you want the coverage here to be over 1. If we look at the stormwater off to the left, the lowest you get is 1.33. Looking very good there. Sewer, lowest you get is 1.26. Again, looking good. You can pay your debt out of sewer. Same story with water. That one's even stronger, above 2.5. And then TID number 7 also cash flows to pay for its debt service over the term. So what this schedule is showing you is that all of these abatement sources can support their debt service, which is good news. And then just for reference, I did include a graph here of where rates have been over the prior 5-year period. So you can see during the COVID years, we had some just crazy low interest rates that we'll probably never see again. And it looks scary because we've come rocketing back up. But we're really in an interest rate environment right now that is about average. Even if we were to back this out to a 10-year window, we're pretty much right on the average interest rate over that period. So it looks scary looking at this chart because there is that spike, but it's just because we're in an abnormal interest rate environment a couple of years ago. So with that, I know that was a lot of information, so I am happy to take any questions that anybody has.
Alder Fisher.
I don't really have a question, but I did want to bring a couple figures up in here that you didn't mention. You mentioned that the city's general obligation debt capacity is always 5% of the city's total equalized valuation. The figure that wasn't mentioned is what will our debt be? How much will the city owe at the end of 2024? And that figure is $47,730,000. Almost $48 million we owe. Now, using that 5% figure, how much can we borrow? You had mentioned the figure that at the end of the year will be 54%. The $47 million, $48 million equals. We can only borrow capacity-wise, according to the formula, $41 million. So if you could equate this down to your budget when you sit down with, at the end of the month at the kitchen table, we owe $47,730, and we only can borrow $41,036. We're over the 50% margin. This hasn't been this way. I've been here 14 years. This has not been this way in the past. This is because of the last decade of spending on wants and forgetting about the needs, our streets and roads. That's all I have to say.
Any other comments? Alder Anderson?
I guess I had a couple questions on the rate. So the estimated rate, your thing is around 3.8%
Yep.
on average. How is that different between a note and the bond? Are they two different rates?
So that's a good question. The way that the market prices debt is by the security. And so both the bond and the note are payable from the property tax. So that's how it gets priced. So it would be the same whether it's a bond or a note.
Okay. And then the other question is, what would be the rate difference between what we used to do, the 10-year, and now going to a 20-year?
Yep. So we accounted for that with how we amortize the debt. Those shorter useful life projects are repaid over a 10-year window. So despite the whole debt issue being over that 20-year term, it's broken into different chunks. So we're essentially doing the same thing that was done previously, where you have a 20-year and a 10-year, but now we don't have to do two issues. We can do it all in one and just break out those 10-year projects and shrink them up.
So the rate is not different?
If you look on the 10-year portion, the rate would be different because you're paying it off quicker, but this is a combined rate for the issue is at 3.87.
Yeah, I guess that's just where I'm confused. So we're doing one big note, but then you're saying it's not one big note because we're separating it out.
Yeah, so if you have the pre-sale report up,
Yep.
Table number 4 will show this pretty well, and maybe better than I can explain it. Yep, that one. So on the left, you see how that 20-year portion, that goes out to 2044. Then we have a 10-year portion that only goes out to 2034. And various purposes throughout are that shorter term. So we're doing the same thing the city did previously. It's just wrapped into one debt issue.
So I guess like, when do we actually have to pay these? Cause I know before, like we will have had like a 10-year bond. But you can, like, it's a rarity. It hasn't happened in many, many years because of the spending Mick has cited. But in years past, we have been able to pay off these bonds like a year or two early or roll, pay them off. And then if there is any little bit left, you can roll that into the new one. So with this being one big one, can we pay off individual portions early?
You can. So how it'll work is you'll make annual payments on this debt service for the first 10 years. And then at that point, you could call the debt early. So whether that's prepaying a portion of it, prepaying all of it, or refinancing some of it. You can't do that for the first 10-year window. After that point, you could.
Okay.
And just to point out, one of the benefits and one of the things that we even discussed in the admin committee or administrative committee, and Harry pointed this out, is the thought process of only doing one issuance versus doing multiple issuances. There's a cost to that. Every single time you have an issue, there's legal fees, there's fees associated with making that debt issuance. And there's also a benefit to having this on the general obligation side of things versus us just taking the TID and having a revenue bond, right? Or the utilities having a revenue bond to finance their debt. And we specifically had this discussion of which is more important to us, our debt capacity and keeping our debt capacity low, or reducing the interest rate. By going and doing general obligation, our ability to capture a lower interest rate is much more significant than if we were to go for a revenue bond. And so that was a specific question that we had brought to the administrative committee, wanting to talk through that. And I think the committee as a whole felt like, and that's what we brought, or that's what we came prepared for tonight, was basically bringing to you, yes, this is an increase to our reduction in our debt capacity. And it's because we're adding significant projects. Kellum Road is a pretty significant part of this debt issuance, right? 2.5 million. And there are significant costs here with our water and utilities, our water and sewer and storm utility. But those were thought processes. That was kind of the policy discussion or decision that we wanted to have. And I appreciate the thoughtful attitude that the council has taken. And we continue, at least as staff, our desires to move in a direction where we're not issuing debt, where we can afford these things without doing debt service. But again, in order to do that, we need to have the revenue to support it, right? Or we just delay projects. Those are the choices that you have to make. And so, again, appreciate the thought process that's gone into it. From a staff standpoint, we want to reduce the issuance costs, and we like the idea of reducing our interest costs because that ultimately saves money. And so what's being presented actually falls in line with that.
Alder Anderson?
I guess I also have a question on that. It was my understanding that maybe Kayla knows about this, would be our debt limit, debt capacity or limit, whatever, the percentage. I didn't think that TID bonds went into that calculation. Is that right?
If I recall, I think John and Dave had kind of gone back and forth on that topic. And I don't have a ton of history on that particular.
Harry, why don't
I
you
can
address
answer
that?
So it depends on the pledge. So if you issue like a TID revenue bond, which Nathan alluded to, that wouldn't. But how we're funding the TID portion here, it's on that general obligation basis. So that's where the state limits you.
But I guess that's what I'm getting at is if we didn't go with this and did it the way we used to, where the stuff is separate, the reason why we kept the TID separate is so that it wouldn't affect our normal borrowing limit. Is that not true?
So while looking at TID revenue debt in this state, it's very hard to sell and you pay a premium on the interest rate that you get on that debt. So this is the same thinking of the stormwater and the sewer and the water of this debt will get us a lower cost of borrowing if we issue on a general obligation basis and use that debt limit. Will save money on the whole.
But I guess my argument would be is that was that was already calculated when we approved the project. Would be that it was, at least, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but it was sold to us that it would all be paid for. That one project, the Kellum Road, that we're now including with our normal city borrowing, would be paid for out of a strictly TID funds. And it's my understanding, the only way to do that is to bond for that separately on its own. And then let the PID have the TID make that payment essentially.
Yeah, so that's essentially what's happening here, where you are borrowing for it under the GO pledge, but you're not levying for the repayment of that portion. That portion is being repaid strictly by TID number 7 revenues.
Yes, but it still counts against our borrowing.
It does.
Whereas if we didn't in years past, then all that TID stuff doesn't count against our borrowing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the
And-
trade-off that admin talked through, was that we had to give up some of that debt limit, that piece that was left that you could borrow, for the fact of less fees and lower interest rate. So, and hopefully we don't need to use a lot of that debt in the future.
Again, I wish we would just have a meeting of the whole, so we wouldn't have to go through this twice, cause I'm feeling a little frustration out of the admin committee of every response I hear is, we talked about this in admin, we talked about this in admin, we talked about this in admin. So is it not up to us to have the discussion here?
No, it comes to admin and then we bring it to the council for your comments.
Okay, well, then I would appreciate it if people kept saying, we talked about this in admin, we talked about this in admin. You know, it's just, I don't like going the 20-year versus 10 years. This feels a lot like going in, buying a new car and the salesman saying, how much can you afford? Well, the car's worth $10,000. That's what I want to pay for it. And he said, well, what are you looking for your monthly payment? Oh, you want your monthly payment to be $200? Oh, let's just get a 96-month loan on this brand new car. It'll be fine. That's what it feels like we're doing to me, is we're kicking this can down the road. You're making the payments over 20 years because we really can't afford it. And this is a way of covering it up. So I'm not going to support this.
Harry, can you comment on previous years with our bonds, what we actually had for 20-year bonds? Like a ratio compared to what we have now? Is it much difference?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I can follow up with you as to a breakdown, but I don't have that right now.
One thing just from and Harry, you can speak to this, but from a professional standard, typically there's two ways of paying for things, right? You can pay for it up front. And the thought process is that you saved for that. And so the individuals that paid for it were people who already lived in the community, or you can pay for it as you go, right? So the idea is that if there's a road that you're paving, you're putting that cost burden over a longer period of time, because that the individuals that will be using that road will be then paying for it, if that makes sense. Either way you go, you can go either way. The thing that I think Alder Anderson's bringing up, and I think is a fair point, is that you want to be consistent. Or if you're going to make changes, that you're making those changes over time, because otherwise you could technically, if you decided that you were going to do a switch, you could be in essence forcing one person to pay twice, right? If you all of a sudden did a huge switch. But in general, 20 years is not, that's fairly normal for bond issuances. I think with the Public Works building, I think that one you did, I'm pretty sure, actually, I can't guarantee that. I need to remember. Was it 10 years? Yeah. But I think that the reason why was because we had to do it in the 10 years based on the law. Whereas if you had done it over a 20-year period, you wouldn't have impacted your, you would have had, it would have softened the amount of actual debt service you would have had been paying year to year. It would have softened the amount that would have hit the tax bill, right? Because to Ken Anderson's point, that you can spread out that debt over a longer period of time. Are you paying more in interest over that time period? Yes, you are.
Any other questions for Harry? Yes.
I just want to kind of use Alderman Fisher's comments about, and I thought that was reflective of what he said. And I guess it triggered to me is that all this presentation and all these numbers and everything, it makes sense. But what's next? And by that, I mean, you know, we're going to get tugs and pulls in terms of how to spend money in the short term and in the long term. And quite frankly, I think we need to be careful about what our debt level is. So we do have flexibility, or we can shrink on the vine 3 years from now just as easily as any place else. So I guess, you know, from not being in all that conversation the administrative committee had, is that, you know, we just need to be careful. And, you know, everybody here knows that, but, yeah. So, I mean, I think that the presentation, and the logic of stretching it out and all that, but, you know, there's big hitters in that group of 11.5 million. And, you know, the question is, will there be big hitters in 2025? That we don't know about. And I guess I don't know the answer to this, but the investment that we're making in the Kellum Road stuff, can it be envisioned that there's going to be a return on that? I mean, you know, and a timeline of that, or nobody knows. So that's just a question.
Yeah, those are TID questions, but certainly if you want more information, Trent would be the guy to answer that most likely, but or Nathan would be able to dig up those numbers for you. But when TIDs are set up, that's the way these projects are paid for, is out of the taxes that are charged to those new developers.
Well, and I think the answer is in this document, right? We've got the TID 7 schedule out. We're showing that we're going to be able to pay for these things. One comment that I'd make is, Joe, to your comment, these are the conversations that we have at budget time, right? We do a 5-year plan. We start looking at the CIP, what can we afford, and so forth. When we come to this meeting, we've already kind of set our budget, and we've kind of set the direction as far as what projects we're going to pay for this year. And so it's not a surprise that we've got $11 million on debt service. There was a question that we legitimately brought to administrative committee, and if in the future we want to bring those questions directly to the council, I'm perfectly open to that. I guess I felt like it was a financial question, so we'd bring it to administrative. We'd bring the resolution as a whole to council. We didn't bring the resolution to just the admin committee. We brought it to the whole of council. But we felt that we would get at least sufficient direction that we could bring this to council for discussion. So I just want to caution us that now is not the time for us to question whether we should issue debt service. The time to question that was at budget. Now we're reviewing, this is the resolution for debt service. Now, if you wanted to take it a different direction, I don't necessarily want to do this to Harry or to the group, because I felt like we got good enough direction. But if the council as a whole wanted to say, hey, hold on, we'd rather pay higher interest. We'd rather pay more issuance cost in order to reduce our debt capacity. You could technically say we don't want to pass this resolution. You could. And we would work around it. But that's really the conversation that's being had tonight. Just to sum up, is we had this discussion, and I would hope that we're not going to say, okay, we didn't like what we did during budget time. We don't want to issue this much debt. Because that was the conversation we had in November.
Yes, go ahead.
So I originally was questioning the whole 10-year bond thing, so I was kind of on the same wavelength as Alder Anderson, but I did want to thank city administrator, because I had never thought of issuing debt in who's going to pay for it. Like, that fire truck is going to last 20 years. And you are essentially saying that people for the next 20 years will be paying for that, rather than, because we didn't plan ahead, right? I don't know how the heck we would ever plan ahead to say, we're going to keep $2 million right now, and we're just going to lock it in a safe, because that $2 million is going to sit there, because in 10 years, we're going to need that $2 million. So the way you laid it out with the people over the next 20 years that were using that fire truck, they're going to pay for it. Same with, we got 1.1 million for roads, right? So roads and the fire truck are, well, if you include Kellam too. So roads and fire truck are like the two biggest things in this issuance. And I'm okay with knowing that philosophy of the people that are using it are paying for it. Yes, there's higher interest rate, but there's also inflation. And right now, if we get a 3.8%, that's about equal with inflation. So honestly, we're not technically losing anything. We're just keeping up with inflation. So it's, I guess, evens as it goes. So just wanted to thank the city administrator for that philosophy. So thank you.
Okay. Alder Anderson?
Yeah, I guess it was my argument against borrowing this amount. I do understand that's what budget time was. I'm not happy with it, but that's when passed. My concern is changing the way we're doing the borrowing. I guess if we were going to make a drastic change the way that we're doing the borrowing, I would have preferred to see a more side by side, like, this is how the numbers line up if we did it the old way, and this is how the numbers line up if we do it this new way. Here's the savings. Here's, how our debt limit will change. Here's how the interest rates are different and stuff like that, That's what I would have preferred to see the option. But that didn't happen. And again, I have a problem with borrowing this much, but that's not my issue here. My issue here is how we're doing the borrowing. So I guess I kind of take a little task of, it sounded to me like the administrator was saying, well, we've done all the work. If you guys don't pass it, you're idiots. And I don't appreciate that. If you, again, you're basically saying, we already sent it to the admin committee. This is what you get. Take it or leave it. It doesn't seem like there's open discussion or anything, or like I said, I would have liked to seen a side-by-side comparison, but apparently everything's handled at admin, so might as well just call the vote because it's already going to pass. You guys already put it through admin, so.
Well, I'd like to disagree with some of your comments there, but that's why we're in two committees, is to make decisions. We did get it presented to us. The main push that I took from the admin committee was the money that we're saving is going to more than pay back any negative behind this. So it was, I don't have that with me right now.
I have it in my bag. I can grab it. I can grab the memo I wrote.
Yeah, the admin committee is pretty frugal, so you gotta remember Mick and Kevin sit on it. So Oh, you're a spender? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so looking at the
Good.
dual issuance, if we were to break out the utility projects, so this is just looking at the stormwater, the sewer and the water, taking those off the GO, putting them on revenue pledges. In total, you would be looking at in principal and interest, paying an extra 1.2 million, and in cost of issuance, an extra 200,000. Over the life of the debt, so over that 20-year term. No, the sewer, stormwater and water projects all have a useful life of 20 years. So they would be financed over that 20-year term. I don't have anything on the 10-year. We didn't run a 10-year analysis.
And Ken, I would be shocked. I don't know. I guess I haven't looked. I've assumed that we've issued 20-year notes or 20-year bonds here in the city. Typically for water, sewer and storm, you would see that length of time. I would presume that with your streets, you'd also do the same thing. It's was standard, I think, with the building. That's why I asked about the 10-year. If it would have been less impactful to the taxpayer had it been a 20-year note, right? But I think we were obligated. I think there was a reason that we needed to do the 10-year. It wasn't, we didn't have a choice. So I guess I would be shocked that you haven't done 20-year notes in the past, but I guess I'd lean to Ellers and to Kayla on that.
Yeah, looking at the base case, which is table 1 in the pre-sale report, it looks like some of those utility projects in the past were over a shorter term than the 20 years. Maybe around the 10 to 15, somewhere in there. I don't have the detailed breakdown, but those abatements on the existing debt do end in 2031. So that's shorter than a 20-year term.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll call the roll.
Think we need a motion? Don't we? Motion and a
You didn't do a
second.
motion yet? Oh,
You
I'm sorry.
don't.
Mr. Zam?
I'll make a motion to approve the debt issuance.
Okay, and a second by Mr. Burnett.
Second.
Thank you.
Now you can call the roll.
Appenfeld,
Aye.
Gwinnett,
Aye.
Burnett,
Aye.
Paris,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Hiley,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Yuds,
Aye.
Zop,
Aye.
Anderson.
No.
Okay, resolution 37-2024 does carry. We'll move on to resolution 38.
Resolution number 38-2024, a resolution for an Inflation Reduction Act IRA Urban Forestry Grant application.
Okay, we have a resolution on the floor. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Fisher? And is there a second to the motion? Second by Alder Appenfeld. Any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Gwinnett, Burnett,
Aye.
Paris,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Hiley,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Yuds,
Aye.
Zop,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Appenfeld.
Aye.
That was it, right?
Okay, resolution 38 passes. So we'll move on to resolution 39.
Resolution number 39-2024, a resolution awarding the contract for the Kellum Road Extension Project.
Okay, you have a resolution in front of you. Is there a motion to pass this resolution? Alder Yuds?
I'll make that motion.
And Alder Bonnet has a second. Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Burnett,
Aye.
Furry,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Hiley,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Yads,
Aye.
Zop,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Appenfeld,
Aye.
Burnett. Burnett,
Aye.
All right, resolution 39 carries, and we're looking at resolution number 40.
resolution number 40-2024, a resolution adopting the First Amendment to the Stony Ridge Development Agreement.
Okay, is there a motion to approve? Alder Burnett
Motion approved.
and Alder Bonnet
Second.
has a second. And is there a little bit of background on that one?
Sure. The development agreement, this was entered into prior to my time, Nathan's time here. It anticipated a land division agreement coming after the developer agreement. And this project proceeded beyond that phase. So all this is a cleanup as to how we handle the financial security, which is actually already what Todd has in place with this developer, just getting the paper caught up with what we were already doing and providing an opportunity for clear requirements as to dedications when the public improvements are done. So with this addition, it looks like all the newer development agreements we have and the developer was fine with moving forward in this manner.
Okay, and the good news is they're up to like 35 houses already and they're still selling as fast as they can build them. Okay, any other discussion on resolution 40? Yes,
Just a follow up on what your comment, if you could clarify, and I don't recall, but the footprint of the 35 houses. I mean, you can see it when you go by, but where's the rest of them come from? Does that go to the north on that development?
yeah, the development was actually 60 houses total. So the first phase is 30. And I think the pavement is still single layer in phase 2, right? Where you can actually feel a bump in the road. That's going into the second 30. I think there's maybe only one lot left in the first 30, right? One or two.
So that goes to the north of the existing development?
Yeah,
Does it go into the golf course or not?
no,
Or driving range, I mean?
no. Actually, the street's been laid out for a long time.
Oh,
So it's not really expanding what you've seen with the cul-de-sacs out there.
no, it's really interesting going by there. All these people in their new houses with their new grass and they're all out, it's kind of fun to see.
Good, community. Okay, any other comments? Please take the roll.
Furry,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Hiley,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Yads,
Aye.
Zop,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Appenfeld,
Aye.
Burnett,
Aye.
Burnett.
Aye.
Okay, resolution number 40 passes through. And now we're into resolution number 41.
Resolution number 41-2024, a resolution to approve a temporary Class B beer license and a temporary Class B wine license to the Beaver Dam Area Chamber of Commerce for the Taste of Wisconsin on June 15th, 2024.
Okay, have resolution 41 in front of you. Alder Burnett
Motion approved.
and Alder Bark.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a first and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? This, of course, is an event that's gone on for many years. Last year they had over 900 participants. Just 2 years back, it was only 450, so it's doubled. They're expecting maybe as many as 1,100 this year. So it brings a lot of out-of-towners in. Any other comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Fisher,
Aye.
Hiley,
Aye.
Keel,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Yads,
Aye.
Zop,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Appenfeld,
Aye.
Burnett,
Aye.
Burnett,
Aye.
Furry.
Aye.
Okay, resolution 41 passes. It moves us on to number
Mayor,
5.
Mayor, before you go to item 5, not to belabor this, but I did want to clarify with Ellers, if there is interest for the council to revert back to a 10-year note, there isn't anything prohibiting. They could amend the motion or I guess the issuance. I know that we already acted on it. I just don't want anyone to feel like it was signed, sealed, and delivered, knowing that Ellers could make this adjustment. It doesn't change what I would recommend. Okay.
I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Alder Burnett,
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
second by Ms. Hiley. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. We are adjourned.